Welcome to Loving Beyond the I Do podcast. This power couple is building stronger marriages one day at a time. Talking about real issues on love, relationships, and marriage longevity. Let's break down the barriers and engage in healthy conversation with your hosts, Jason and Tina Marie. Take a seat and buckle up because things are about to get real.
Are you really listening?
The way to communication.
So, have you ever felt like your partner isn't really listening or isn't really hearing you?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, okay. So before we get into that, I'm just going to say, welcome to Loving Beyond the I Do podcast. I'm your host, or one of them, Jason, along with my beautiful wife, Tina Marie.
That's me.
All right, baby. So let's go ahead and get into this hearing and listening and something like that, right? Because you said...
Is hearing listening?
Well, you know what? We had a client that struggled with that. Hearing and listening.
Is hearing listening? Is listening hearing?
The answer to that question is no, they're not the same.
They're not the same? What's the difference?
The difference is I hear you.
Okay.
I can hear all the stuff that you're saying.
Okay.
But I may not be comprehending what you're saying.
So that's comprehension. Is that listening? What if you do comprehend what I'm saying?
Then I'm listening to you.
Nope, that's not true.
See, I got it
Nope.
backwards.
Nope.
So I'm listening to you. I just listen to what you're saying. But I'm not comprehending.
No, you hear me. You hear me.
That's
But
what I said.
choosing to listen is listen to what someone says it.
Right.
What someone's saying. You're taking it for face value. You're not filtering it through what you want to hear and what
Right.
you don't want to hear. You listen, you're hearing all of it. You're listening to what they're saying, and it's actually computing with you. So if I say don't do that, because someone says don't do that, I don't like it, and then you keep doing it, you're not listening. You heard them.
That's what I just said. I heard you.
Yeah, but you said listening is comprehending. It doesn't have to be comprehending. It's hearing them. It's listening to what they're saying. It's like you know, comprehension is a little bit more like, you know, if
Okay.
I'm saying something is difficult.
Right, I got you.
So you're saying comprehension is if I don't understand what you're saying.
No.
But if
I'm
you're
just
no, what I'm saying, what comprehension, the word comprehension.
Right, I got you.
Right. So to comprehend something means to understand something. So
Right.
that is another form of miscommunication. But when we're talking about listening, we're talking about when you're having a conversation or an argument or a debate or just
a conversation or trying to have a conversation.
Right, communication in relationships, and you're trying to understand why your partner doesn't understand you, right? The comprehension part. So you think it may be comprehension, but it's really they're just not listening. Case in point,
Exactly.
you know, my son said that to me, which I think I mentioned before. My son had said that.
That you weren't listening? Or you
didn't listen.
Right.
Right. I was like, I heard you before. And he was like, yeah, but you didn't listen.
Right.
So listen means you hear what
Actively.
exactly. No, well, you're acting on what they've said.
Right.
So you hear them.
You have to internalize
Then
it,
you're
though.
listening for what you need to do, and then you're doing it because you've listened to what the person has said.
Right.
So now you're actually shifting your behavior, your thoughts, whatever, the way you communicate, whatever it is that wasn't happening before. I don't think it's a comprehension issue. It's just a matter of, do I want to listen to what this person is saying?
So it's kind of a loaded question.
So like you tell your child to wash the dishes, they heard you. They're just not listening when they don't do it.
So like I was getting ready to say, so it's like a loaded question when you say, you hear me? You're like, you hear what I'm saying?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like,
'cause
yeah.
people,
And then
I
you
hear
say, yes, I hear you.
Right.
Right. And then you get
Well,
upset.
sometimes when I say, do you hear me, it's because I really want to know that you hear me. Or people really want to know, did you hear them?
I understand.
So I don't think that applies in relationships. Most of the time in relationships, you don't say, did you hear me? Well, they may. But I'm just saying, right, but you know, for me particularly, when I say, hey, did you hear me? You know, if I'm hollering downstairs or, you know, you are a little further, I'd be like, did you hear me? Because I don't want to have to assume, right? So, I mean, it kind of is a loaded question depending on how it's being posed.
Right.
How
when I say that, it's like when I say, did you hear me? I'm saying it like
some people say, are you listening?
Right. Are you
Did
listening?
Get me?
Right.
Did you get me? Did you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
That's why I said it can be considered a
right.
loaded
Because I'll
question.
say, did you hear me? And then somebody says yes. Like, okay, cool. That means that you heard what I said.
You
understood
understand.
it. Yeah. Right.
Right.
So,
but again, that still doesn't mean they're listening.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Right. So when you say that it's not really a loaded question, you just have to be clear what you mean.
Yeah.
So when you ask, did you hear me? You're really meaning, did you hear me? Which means that you hear and comprehend what I said.
Right.
So that
I'm
saying. They're saying, yes, I did hear you and I do understand.
Well,
but that doesn't mean that they're going to listen to whatever it is that you're asking or requesting or, need for them to do.
Yeah.
So it's a difference. So that's why understanding there is a difference, right? So those are one of those words that people interchange back and forth.
For sure.
But we need to understand, with anything, we need to understand what it is we're asking.
Yeah, right.
And be clear at what we're asking. Because somebody might say, well, you asked me, did I hear you?
And I answered your question.
Like, hey, get up and do something. And they
so you start to argue about the hearing and the listening. Well, did you hear me? Yeah, so if you heard me, you would be doing this.
No,
but then
so
you have a misunderstanding about the hearing and the listening.
No, you have an argument because you assumed. You have an argument because what you
Somebody
wanted.
assumed.
Right.
Okay.
So you're having an argument because one person
thought that they were being heard.
Or one person is upset because the action they wanted from expressing themselves wasn't taken, and the other person is rebuttaling back because they're like, hey, you asked me, did I hear you? Or you expressed yourself and I got it. When I'm ready to do whatever I want to do, I'll do it. But you go, right. I'm going to listen. You're not going to, you're not the boss of me, right? That's what people think in relationships, and which is true. So that's why we have to understand where listening comes in.
Right.
And what listening entails. And that's why we say listening is a skill, because you can hear, and sometimes your listening can be off too, because I know sometimes, even like when we're reading, you ever read something in your mind?
Oh, you'll read some words that's not even on the page.
Exactly. It's the same thing. And if you already, especially in relationships, any relationship, at work or whatever, if you already have a history with that person, then you're already filtering it through how you want to hear it.
you're about to hear something totally different. They can just say good morning, and it could just be something else. You say good morning.
So you listening is I heard her very well. Or I'm listening. I'm listening to what she said. But even in the process of listening, you're still filtering it through your feelings, your emotions. So being able to definitely understand the skill that's required, where you're not mentally engaging.
Right.
You're listening with the two ears. Right. You're listening. You hearing them and you're listening to really intake what it is that they're saying.
Understand what they're saying.
Not always understand.
I understand that. I got that. I understand that.
All right.
So yeah, like I said before, we were working with a client and they had the same issue where they couldn't wrap their head around listening and hearing. And it was a disconnect there.
You know what? Because people like what you were just saying, people want to argue. They want to argue the issue. People want to argue the issue. You asked me, did I hear you? Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah.
You didn't ask me, did I understand that?
Well,
did I want to follow your... Because
again,
really, even...
You know what I mean when I say, do you hear me?
Really, what the issue is that if it's something that one person wants, the listening is the place where the gray area.
Right. Okay. Right.
So it's, if I'm saying something and I'm asking you, do you hear me? And I want my feelings to be expressed, like I said, we can understand, but it's the what do I want you to do after? Okay. And that's where the gray area is, because even in my communication to you, what I'm expecting from you listening and what you hear from you listening could be two different things.
For sure.
So that's why not only do we have to be clear about hearing, listening, but also unspoken expectations. So sometimes we go around what we're really trying to say.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Because we're, I got exactly what you're saying. So why do we feel like we're not heard?
I don't know. Why do you feel like you're not heard?
I don't know, because sometimes when
knock question. Knock. No. Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like, well, not me, but maybe me. I feel sometimes that...
well, let's just talk in general, because that's what we're here for. We're helping people to understand why your partner or someone else may not feel heard. Exactly. Even after they said something 500 times, why do we still feel like we, as in a collectiveness, why do we still feel like we're not heard if it's something that we've said over and over and over again.
Because we didn't get the response that we thought we should have when I expressed my feelings. So if I said this was the case and this was the scenario, and then you go, I'll go, well, did you hear me? Did you understand? I mean, I clearly said what I said, and that's not the response to go along with what I said.
Or sometimes some of the common things that we find is that we're trying to hear people while we're doing other things.
Yes.
So we're multitasking.
That's a problem right there.
Which,
we cannot.
We can. We
can, but we can't do it well. We can.
I guess it all depends on what two things you're doing. So for me, when I'm trying to text and you're trying to talk, I'll say, okay, go ahead, and you'll talk, but I'm texting, and then I'll kind of tune you out. So I don't really hear or listen.
I just picked up on something, guys. I just picked up on something.
No, I'm saying because when that's the reason why sometimes we don't feel like we're being heard, because we're multitasking.
Yes. Yeah.
Even the person that may be talking.
That's true.
Because
if I'm doing something and you're talking.
And so there's distractions, right? Case in point, I mean, we've had where we're talking with couples, whether in a coach setting or just in general, and we're having a conversation and somebody walks up and starts talking, and so you're trying to have a conversation or you're on the phone, right?
Yeah.
So that happens a lot. That happens a lot with me. I'm talking to someone on the phone and they're talking to somebody else outside and
trying to talk to you, and you like, so what are you saying?
You're like, what? You're like, what did you say? Oh, I'm not talking to you. Then they say something that's to you and you don't answer. They go, oh, I'm talking to you. Well, how am I supposed to know when you're talking to me and when you're not? So, right, the not being sure who you're talking to by distractions.
Right.
And then sometimes making assumptions.
I think that's one of the big problems in miscommunication is making assumption. So just because I said something and I know you heard it, I assume you understand
what it is
what
I
I'm
want you to
trying
do.
to translate.
Right.
And
exactly.
that's where the misunderstanding come in. And then it's like, okay, well, I said this and I'm out the door or wherever. And you come back and the situation hasn't taken care of itself based on what you said when you left the room.
And what happens in those situations when we're talking about in the emotional or in the intimate relationship, your emotions, your feelings get hurt, right?
For sure.
And so what happens is that now you're feeling a certain type of way because the assumption that you thought was going to take place or what you wanted to take place hasn't, or the person hasn't responded in the way that you would have liked them to respond.
Right.
So then you feel like you weren't heard, like you're not
That's
valued.
it right there.
And then you get frustrated, right?
Yep.
And then we go into this whole snowball thing. I'm frustrated. I'm tired of saying the same thing over. And now then you feel like you're by yourself, and it's the loneliness that comes. And then
you
with
withdrawn.
With the loneliness, then you grow, there's distance because now one person is tired of saying the same thing over and over, and they don't know. Okay, well, I've said it 15,000 ways.
I don't know any other way to say it. I've said it every way that I possibly could.
And so there's something on both sides because there is another way to say it, right? And that's where we fall prey to, because if we keep communicating the way we're communicating and we're still not being heard, there's a breakdown both in the person who's giving and the person who's receiving. Because as we've often said, sometimes you get mates get used to one another.
Yep.
And so you're hearing the person say the same thing, and so you just cut them off. And it really doesn't matter what they're saying. It's like
I'll put you on the pay no mind list.
Right. So you're one mate is really trying to communicate, but they're communicating the same way they've always communicated. So your partner is now receiving that communication the same way they've always received that communication.
And they can't hear anything
And there's
different.
a breakdown.
Yep.
There's a breakdown. So it doesn't matter if you scream, it doesn't matter if you whisper, it doesn't matter if you cry it. It's like it's not going to be heard because the communication has broken down years ago or months ago. The communication is broken, and so therefore it's not getting through.
Right.
It's not getting through.
No matter how you say it, it's just because you're the messenger and you're saying it. And
The same way you've always, we got to change.
I'm always going to hear it the way that I'm accustomed to hearing
right.
it. Right. So
it's just
however
like
you
talking to your kids or whatever.
They telling you they call it tuning a person out. Right. It's like I hear you, but I'm not really paying attention.
I'm not listening.
I'm
not
listening.
I'm honestly
It's
not
registered
listening. And it
anything
doesn't
like that.
matter because I know what you're gonna say. We make the assumption that we know what the other person's gonna say. So we stopped listening. We can hear their voice, but we stop listening because we automatically assume we know what they're going to say. Oh, here we go again. They're talking about this. They're talking about that. And so we just tune them out.
Yeah.
And so the person just keeps saying it the way they're saying it. So when we're talking about being heard, we have to understand it goes both ways. We have to realize what we're doing to not hear our mate. And our mate has to understand what it is that they're doing, that whereas they're not hearing or listening or comprehending what's going on. And so we have to be able to reconnect that disconnect.
So, and one thing too is a person thinks that they're an excellent communicator.
Right, absolutely.
I am very, very good at communicating. Well, one thing about communication is you be able to deliver the message, and then the message is received, and then they can...
And the way that you intended for it to be received.
Right.
Absolutely.
So there's many things you have to throw the ball, they have to catch the ball, and they have to give the ball back to you. So if all those things can happen in a conversation, then you're a good communicator. But if you throw the ball and you don't get the ball back, and the other person didn't catch the ball, then guess what? You're not a good communicator.
I know a lot of studies that we've seen, and even expert opinions are saying that, and we've stated it even in our book, as well as on our podcast or even with our coaching, is that we have to be present. Each person has to be present, first of all, in the conversation.
Yep.
So we often start conversations assuming that the other person is hearing and listening.
And available.
Exactly, right? So before we even start a conversation, we need to make sure that both participants are fully present in the conversation.
Right.
You just having a conversation with yourself, and then you get upset.
And then you get upset. Right. I'm busy. They're doing something,
Right,
whether you're watching TV or whatever.
I mean, not to put our business out there, but I mean, that has happened where I'm in the middle of something and somebody will just come and start talking and rambling, and then I'll be like...
Yeah, because you don't look busy.
I'm not... Who said I was talking about you?
Oh, well, I'm saying you could... I'm just saying the person could not look busy.
Right. So I'm saying sometimes the other person, like you said, they're not available. They may be in the middle of a call or text or reading or actually a thought. And so if your mind is preoccupied with either what I need to do, how I need to do it, or something like that, and somebody just comes and starts talking to you, especially if it's in a negative tone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They just come in and
they start dumping, right?
So you're not hearing them anyway. You're not hearing nor listening. And you're definitely not understanding. So just realizing that communication is making sure that both people want to be in the conversation and that they're both in tune and present at the conversation.
I know one of the clients that we work with ran into this problem. One of the mates had a conversation, I guess, going on in their head.
Are you listening, talking to the people, or are you talking to the people down there?
Yeah, both places.
Okay.
So, so they would have he would have a conversation. So the person would come and they would just start a conversation, but the conversation would start like in the middle of the conversation. So one person is lost because they don't understand what's going on, and they're trying to get caught up in the conversation, and they're trying to infer, trying to figure out what's going on, what you're talking about, what's going on. And then the person that's telling the story gets upset.
Right.
You're not following me. You don't understand what's going on. Like, well, you almost like start in the middle of a conversation. I don't know where you're going with this. I don't know the context of the conversation.
And what we found, and what we found is that is one of the main issues that brings up frustration. And so you get frustrated, both parties, the person who's talking and the person who's supposed to be the listener. And because the listener is like, you started in the middle of the conversation, because you're thinking one thing and then you just start in the middle. So that's one thing that is just misunderstanding. And like you said, first of all, being present, then understanding that let me start from the beginning, go through the middle, and then get to the end. Because when you keep experiencing the same thing, that's how disconnect occurs.
Exactly.
That's how tension builds up. That's how we get frustrated with the same old. We think that our partner is really not caring when it's really just a communication breakdown.
That's it. It's like, I didn't understand where you started. I don't understand how this conversation started. I don't know where it's going, and I don't really get the full context of what we're talking about. So I very well can't be engaged in a conversation. I don't know where it's going or what it's all about. So that's how a lot of things...
And when we talk about communication is key, is because communication is usually the way we we interact with each other. And so when the communication breaks down, then that leads to bigger problems. It's like the compound problem. So when we can eliminate the other issues, it's like, oh, they didn't do this, well, I'm not going to do that. They didn't hear me, they didn't listen. So because the communication, and it could be really you're like you said, the assumption of that the person knows what you want and what you're saying.
Right.
I mean, and so sometimes even myself, I find myself rereading text messages or
oh, you definitely have to reread text messages.
Right.
Because you can read that thing totally wrong.
You're thinking that, as a matter of fact, right, you're thinking, so you're writing what you think you're saying.
Yep.
And then you read it, you be like, and you're reading it that way sometimes, but you have to read it several times because sometimes it autocorrects.
Yep.
And so you're still thinking about what you wanted to say, and you're reading it thinking that it says this, and you're like, what? You sit in and you go, dang, I missed that again.
I got to rewrite, and then you're trying to hurry up and put in words, well, I meant this instead of that. I didn't.
And so, but my point was, I reread my text messages because I try to be, and not that I hit the head on the nail every time, but I try to be, what is the message I'm trying to convey in this text message?
Right.
Right. What do I want the other person to know, to do,
right,
to interpret,
right?
And what is my feelings and my words and am I saying it in a nasty manner? Am I saying it in a sarcastic manner? Am I saying it in a happy manner? So since words only present themselves, you have to put other things. You have to make sure that they're formulated correctly, so that the other person receiving it, if they're in a bad mood, if they're in a happy mood, it all depends on the other person, and we're not with that person. That's why we're sending a text message that when it's received, they can receive it in the manner in which it was sent.
Right.
So, like you said,
but then that's out of your control too. Once you send it.
No, but I'm just talking about how I make sure when I'm communicating, I reread it and read it again because I want to make sure that the message that I'm trying to send or convey, I'm conveying it through my message. Sometimes I'll type half and I'll be like, oh, wait, they may not know what I'm talking about because, or I'll leave out words because I'm typing too fast. So I want to make sure that it's in the right tone. Right. It's in the right wording. It's in the right sentence, you know what I'm saying? It's in the right sentence structure.
Yeah.
Like, how am I putting it together? Right? It's in the right tense.
Yeah. You know. But you know what? Like I said before, you can do all that, and a person can read it. Because I picked up my phone and read a text message and said, what are they talking about? I'm like, where are they coming from? Then you have to reread it and reread it. And you go, oh, I had this thing all wrong. I was going down a whole nother path.
Right.
And they weren't even talking about that.
I mean, if anything, if we're talking about miscommunication, definitely with text messages. Yeah, I will get text messages and I'll be like, what is this person trying to say?
Yeah.
And then I'll ask a question and they'll respond with an even more puzzling text. And I'm like,
I just want clarity. That's it. I just
want clarity. And
so
when you say that, people may get offended, but I say this, I'll be like, you know what? Hey, tell me what that means. Because not only that, but they could be responding to a text 2 or 3 texts up.
Yep.
And so you just got a text and you read that, you're like, it don't even go.
Listen,
and so it's just, and so when I tell people, okay, what does that mean? So if I text you and I say, what does that mean? It's because, and I as a matter of fact, I did it today. Somebody responded back and they were like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? I was like, I'm not trying to be funny. I just need clarity. I need clarity. What's that mean? Does that mean A or does that mean B? Because we talked about both of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So,
and that's the equivalent of someone starting in the middle of a conversation, or they'll go up, like you have a conversation thread going, and then the conversation stops.
Or you just assume that the person knows what's going on in your mind.
And then they come back and they go way back to the top and they make a comment
about,
at the bottom, and you go, what? That's not that. I done went like 3 or 4 texts back. That doesn't make any sense. And then they
because you're waiting for the last
right. They didn't went back 2 days and grabbed the text, and then they're gonna reply to it in the middle of the thread that we're talking about.
And that's why you have to do that reply. That's the good thing with reply. But I'm just but that makes it. I mean, just like in intimate relationships, right? You go back and talk about something that happened 3 or 4 days ago, and you and your partner talking about this, and then you're like, what? What do you wait? How do we switch conversations, or how does that
tie into
this? Right. Exactly.
So that can start the process of disconnection right there. right? You get, you assume, and then you feel a certain way because you put out, you have a conversation.
Your assumption leads to your emotions, and if they're not positive, you already feeling something that may not even be true.
For sure. Yeah, that's true. So you have to be careful with your assumptions, right? And you want to minimize those gaps as well, right?
Well, it breaks it down. So if every time, people communicate that it's not being received or it ends up in an argument, then the effort to communicate gets lessened.
Okay.
I'm not going to put forth the effort I need to communicate because that person doesn't hear me anyway. That person doesn't understand me anyway.
Right.
So again, we're talking about the frustration that builds up from history, that builds up from the experiences that we have with our partner. And that's why it's important when we're talking about trying to resolve communication issues, we have to understand where do we start first.
Yep.
Most people just want to, I do it right. And that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing.
If you did it right, you wouldn't have these issues and your communication gaps. We always trying to say,
we good. It's my partner. It's my partner. But there's something that we're doing as well. We can always be better because if you and your partner are not on the same page at the same time, on the same book, on the same sentence, then there's a miscommunication somewhere.
Yep.
There is a disconnect somewhere. And so it takes really understanding as we said, listening is a skill, communicating is a skill, talking is a skill, being able to express yourself without the inflection of anger or hostility or blame, even in your voice, right? Sarcasm, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, I told you, and you just didn't want to hear me, right?
Yep.
So again, then the person stops listening. How we communicate through body language, through our eyes, through our
stress in certain words.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about communication, again, we're always talking about the issue, whatever the issue is, communication, sex, whatever the issue is, intimacy. What are some of the other ones? Touch, quality time, whatever.
Conflict,
cleaning up, childcare, whatever the issue is. We're always bringing up the issue. See, I told you. That one so said the same thing. But we're never trying to bring up how do I resolve it from me, not from my partner, not from my boss, not from my neighbor. How do I start to resolve the issue that I'm having with whomever, where communication is not being received on both parts?
Right.
Sometimes there's just some of those people that you just got to love from a distance because it doesn't matter what you say, they're not listening. But we're talking about intimate relationships. So let's get this together first and work on those, because those really, if we can get those together, we can get all of them together.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Because we're trying to get it together with the person that we love, that loves us,
right,
as opposed to someone outside who we have to work with who really may not love us,
right, who
probably doesn't love us. So it may be a little harder when the feelings aren't reciprocated. So when we can look from a place of, okay, how can I change, and what am I looking at that I can look at differently as to how the communication matters? What matters to me? So, right, how am I not being present? How can I give my full attention? How can I reflect back to what is being said? How can I respond with both understanding, comprehension, right, and empathy, understanding what the person is trying to say?
Ooh. Well, now you hit the nail on the head there. So you have to be, first of all, you have to find a safe space, right? You have to make sure that the person is available, that the space is available, that you're ready to communicate.
Yeah,
that's
no
the problem, right?
Yeah.
That's
no
the problem.
Distractions.
No, right, no distractions. So you have to just be careful of that. Like, we have to turn off things, right? We have to turn off phones, or put the phones down, televisions, you know, and I mean, because if you're trying to have a conversation, you can't.
And the TV's on.
Nah, don't football. Right now?
Anything.
Oh, no. Yeah.
If my eye is on the television and I'm trying to listen to you, trust me,
And you be like, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, you do. You hear me, but you ain't comprehending nothing I'm saying.
And you say, all right, go ahead, do it. They be like, huh? What'd you say?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I've done that. I remember my mom was paying attention to something else. And I knew she was paying attention to something else. I knew she wasn't paying attention. And she said, I asked, could I go out? I I said, my dear, can I go outside? And I asked her a couple times. She said, yeah, boy, go ahead. Pew! I shot out the door. And then when she came to her senses and the movie went off, was off, she called me back in the house. She said, did I tell you to go outside? Yeah, I asked you. I was standing right there. I was asking you. She said, I wasn't paying attention. I'm like, I didn't know that. I did what I was supposed to. I asked you if I could go out. So I was kind of gaming the system there. But, at a young age, I knew that her attention wasn't really on what it needed to be on when I was asking her the question.
So when we're talking about resolving these communication issues, as Jason said, the first thing is to come together in a place where you won't get distractions, where both people are present, right?
Like we like to say, want to have a love talk. So that's when we say, hey, I want to have a love talk. Then that means that no more distractions. I need you to focus in on what I'm about to say after that. If you're on your phone, put your phone down. If you're watching TV, if you can mute the television and turn towards me, we just kill all distractions at that point, and then you totally focus on what I'm about to say.
And you're hearing it for what they're saying, not for what you think they're saying.
Right.
So
I'm not
it's
trying
no
to respond.
Judgment.
Right.
It's no response. It's just really the full act of hearing and listening.
That's all. But you have to be present in order to do that, like Tina said. So if I say, hey, I would like to have a love talk, the ground rules are already set.
Right.
So I already know that everything has to be placed down and I'm totally focused. But here's the thing. I don't need to respond. I'm listening. I'm in listening mode, right? I'm receiving at this.
Listening mode.
Yeah. Actively listening. I'm not passively listening here.
Right.
I'm actively listening. So that's the important part. So I know that at this point, I'm just listening. Now, I'm listening because I'm going to make sure that I understand what she's saying.
So that's what Jason just explained is active listening and why it matters, right? So active listening means I've tuned out everything else.
Yep.
I have shown you that you are important enough for me to pay attention to. That is the number one thing in being able to effectively communicate, to give your 100% attention.
Yep.
Right? Not listening to respond, but listening to just be in the conversation and understand what's going on. To be listening to what the person is saying, to feel what the person is saying, to hear what the person is, all of those things, to be active and present so that you can understand from a place of, okay, whether it's empathy, whether it's whatever it is.
Understanding or acknowledgement. Just like now, if I'm actively listening and Tina Marie says, you hear what I'm saying? I go, yeah, let me just make sure I got it. And then I can repeat back to her what she said in the way that I understood it. And if that works out, then she goes, yes, you're listening. Now the conversation flows a lot different.
And I know a lot of people have been trained and they hear this to use the I statements to express how you feel so the other person doesn't feel attacked, which is very good. But sometimes we misuse those I statements.
Yeah, we do.
We twist them around and we go, I want you to understand what I'm saying and I don't know why you don't do. And we still bring the you in there.
Yep.
Right? And so the I statement is for you to be able to communicate from a place of expressing your emotions, your feelings, your understanding in the situation, your comprehension level, and for the other person to listen. And then if needed to be a response, then they can respond effectively. But if we're
But they need to know how you feel, right? So when your I statement is how you actually feel, what this situation is doing to you and how you're viewing this situation. Because if I don't understand how you feel, I can't I can't do anything about it if I don't know how you feel, right? Because I feel a certain way about it, and it may be a totally different view from my standpoint. Obviously it is, because I feel like it's not a big deal, but to you it's a big deal. But you need to be able to say, look, this makes me feel this way. When you do this or when this situation comes up and you interact this way.
And I find that it has a better response that way.
Oh, it does.
When people, when we're communicating effectively, neither person feels attacked. And the whole conversation goes totally different.
Sure.
And so when we get to a place where we're using I statements effectively in everything, we have to understand that we were not taught how to effectively communicate.
Right.
Okay, we throw around these words, but nobody's really learning what they mean.
Right.
So, well, we need to effectively communicate. You need to be actively listening. You need to do this. But if you're not practicing and you don't really truly understand what it means, then you're not giving, you're doing a disservice to what it is the purpose of effective communication is supposed to establish. Effective communication. Right. So we have to make sure that as we're learning these words and as we're learning these things that people constantly say, and we keep hearing, it's all over social media, but what does that mean to me? How do I take what I'm hearing and interpret it and then learn it and then practice it?
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
So anything, you can't learn something one time and think you're like fluent in it. I mean, I've taken Spanish 1,000 times, used to speak it with my dad, used to speak it with my family. And I mean, as opposed, for lack of a better word, knowing a little bit, just very little. I mean, you got to practice it.
Yeah.
You have to practice
still forget it, right?
Absolutely. You got to practice what you've put. If you don't practice, like the saying goes, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I don't care what that is. That is such a true statement.
Yeah, all across the board, that's for sure.
If you don't use your body, you're going to lose your body. If you don't use your mind, you're going to lose your mind. If you don't use the skills and talents that you have, you're going to lose the skill. I know people say, oh, I used to be able to do that. Well, why do you think you can't do it anymore?
Because you stopped doing it.
Because you stopped practicing it because you took it for granted that it was going to always be there or whatever, right? All right, so
now that we talk about communication or the hearing or the lack of hearing, the lack of listening, and all the other stuff, we have a fix for that, dear.
We do. We have a fix for that. What is it? We do.
Yeah, because we wrote a book, and the book is called "Manifest a Joy-Filled Relationship."
Oh, look at that! This book right here. Look
there you
at
go.
that.
Yep.
Manifest a joy-filled relationship.
And it is talked about or discussed in the book extensively about active listening.
Yes.
And communication.
Yes.
So
and skills and practices to help you to get to a point where you can understand where the communication is breaking down. You can also understand how to repair it, right? So if I have the right tools for the job, I can get the job done correctly.
And most efficiently.
Yes.
Like that effective communication.
Less pain, less anguish, less frustration.
And less time. All right, we can get in, get the tool, do the job, and get out. Right?
And we can move on to manifesting a joy-filled relationship because that's what it's about. And so let me see if I don't have my glasses on. But I mean, in chapter 1, we start right
we go right in.
Chapter 1 with going into, let me see if I can put on these nice little glasses for myself.
Okay, you're going to bring up a little something here
for me? Let me see what this says. I mean, right here in chapter 1, it says, which is the law of oneness, consciousness building journaling prompts. And so we have to understand, so that's about journaling. It's about meditation. It's about understanding who you are in the relationship. So let's skip back here to, let's see, what the law of correspondence. So we talk about timeline analysis, navigating transformative reflections, right? So there's all kinds of stuff in here. Shaping your vibrations with intention.
Come on.
So we talk about visualization practices, a bunch of affirmative practices, so many things in this book. It's not about just intimate relationships, even though we're talking to now. Communication is with everyone.
It'll make a lot of your relationships better.
Understanding, but it all starts with you. How do I fix what I'm doing incorrectly?
That's right.
Because most of the time it's something that we're doing that we think we're doing right, that we're not willing to look from a different perspective to say, well, maybe it's me. That's the problem. It's always someone else. So this book is the way to manifesting anything is awareness. So you cannot manifest with what you want. You cannot manifest what you want without the awareness of what you want and the awareness of what's not working. So we happen to be talking to a couple of people today, and they were talking about cause and effect, right? And that's one of our chapters also, cause and effect. For every effect in your life, there is a cause. Yep. And so what do you need to do differently? What is causing this effect. And so if you don't like the effect, you have to change the type of cause, right? And so just understanding that this book is just really about manifesting the type of life. And when we talk about joy-filled relationships, everybody wants to be joyous. Everybody wants to be happy. You want to be enjoying life on a daily basis. Nobody wants to walk around miserable. No. And so just understanding that it starts with equipping yourself with the right things, the right information, so that you can understand it and digest it in a way that makes sense for you.
There's plenty of exercises, plenty of things to help you with skills and tools and things for you to work on you. So the first thing you have to realize is you have to be aware of where you're at. And a lot of times, and the couples that we've worked with here lately, they didn't know where they were at.
They
didn't have
all
that.
The time.
Yeah, that's true. But they didn't have a starting point.
Self-awareness.
They don't know exactly where they are.
Self-introspection.
Well, I'll say this: even if when they tried the exercise with the introspection, they did not go deep enough, and they weren't really truthful with themselves. It is really hard to look in the mirror and be truthful with yourself, right? Because when you're looking in the mirror and you're saying something, right then and there whether you believe that or not. You already know. So it's hard for you to fool yourself. So you have to be true to yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. And that's the only way you're going to get better.
And sometimes the hardest way to do that, now you said it's hard looking in the mirror, but it's also hard to hear from somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
Oftentimes people will tell us the truth, but we don't want to hear it because it's from someone else. And so when my suggestion would be, if you hear something that maybe you don't feel is truthful or honest, just take it with you and then really unpack it later and then get our book, work on it, and then see where there may be
a shortcoming,
something that you need to work on.
Yeah.
Right? We're not saying that other people's opinion of you matters.
Right.
It doesn't, but it is important for us to be able to take a different perspective. That's all I'm saying. Just what do I need to work on for me and for a personal level so that I can be personally successful, so that I can be truly the best version of myself.
In the end, that's what we want, right? We just want to be the best version of ourselves. We want to show up a certain way in our relationships. We want to show up
a certain way in life.
And I was just going to say, in life, because if I show up better in my relationship and in my life, all of my relationships are going to change. Everything is going to be better if I'm better. So that's why we say you have to work on yourself in order to make manifest a joy-filled relationship, because you can't manifest a joy-filled relationship if you haven't gotten any better. So if you get better, watch how your whole life changes around you. All right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So make sure you pick up the book. Oh, let me tell you where you can get the book at.
Where can I get the book from?
manifestajoyfilledrelationship.com, or you can go to legendaryrelationship.com/manifest.
So you can pick up this wonderful best-selling book, #1 in all categories that it was in. You can pick it up at
manifestajoyfilledrelationship.com or legendaryrelationship.com/manifest.
I think it'll be easy to just go to manifestajoyfilledrelationship.com.
No
dash in the words. Manifest, all lowercase. Manifestajoyfilledrelationship.com.
I'm telling you, get this copy. It will change your life. It will open your eyes. And if you're open to it, it can really change your life.
Didn't you already say that?
It can change your life.
Yeah.
Right. I'm saying it can change their life, but I'm saying I had to come back and say, if you're open to it, it can change your life. I know that it can.
Okay.
Because it has for us.
You. Thanks for. Okay.
But you have to be open in order for it to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. See, listening.
Yep.
Listening. Because I'm like, I heard that. You just said it. And now listening, because I really wasn't actively listening. I heard what you said. And I was like, didn't you just say that? And you were like, no. Yep. I said it'll change your life. But if you're open.
Yep.
it will change your life.
Right.
See there?
Yeah.
See there?
See that?
What? See the difference?
Yeah.
Active listening.
That's
Make
what
sure
I'm
you
talking
listen to what the person is saying. Listen. Listen to what the person is saying. Don't just think you heard them and you know what they're saying.
Because you know me oh
Listen.
so well. I know exactly what you're going to say. I know when you
That's
go.
what people do all
Yep.
the time, right? Right?
Yeah. We pick up on all of our little gestures and things like that. Oh, okay, what does that mean? You put your hands in your pocket. What you about to say now? You about to say this or whatever. So people pick up on all these different things, but you have to show up different, right? And I'll say this. If your program was working, your program, meaning your relationship and everything, you would be happy. If your program isn't working, then grab
Then you're
the
not
book.
happy.
Yeah.
If you're unhappy or unjoyous, you know that
Your
there's
program
something
not
in your
working.
program. It's not a well-oiled machine. So
There you go.
you may need to seek outside something. That's the problem in our communities with relationships. We're always trying to fix it ourselves. If we knew what the problem was, we wouldn't have
Fix
created
it.
So if you have some tools and something that can help you, why not reach out for it and get it? That's all my answer is.
Yeah.
Why do we sit back and suffer instead of when there's things out there that can help us, right? Why do we suffer financially when there's financial literacy? Why do we suffer in our relationship when there's relationship literacy, right? There's always things out there, but we just don't take the initiative to make it better because we think that we can fix it. If we can fix it, we wouldn't have had the problem.
There you go. Or we
Right.
wouldn't be still having a problem. We'd be beyond it, right?
So, not really, I can hear people saying, well, blah, blah, blah. But hey, seek something different. Nothing changes if nothing changes.
That's right.
That's my 2 cents on it. Nothing changes if nothing changes. All right. So remember today, start a small conversation and listen. Listen to your kids. Don't think you know them. Listen to your mate. Don't think you know what they're going to say. Listen to what your coworker is saying or your boss is saying, because sometimes when we take the time to listen,
We'll hear something different.
We'll hear something different. And therefore, when you hear something different, you can respond differently.
Ooh.
Right? And so let's not keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, which is the definition of insanity. And so we get frustrated, we get upset, and we go insane because we don't want to change.
Why aren't people listening to me? Why they don't understand?
How come things aren't
Yeah,
changed
right.
after I've said it? The thing is that when you change the inner, the outer would change, cause and effect. What chapter? I think that's chapter 6, chapter 5 or 6. I took my glasses off. But understand. Yep. I can't believe it. Okay, so cause and effect, all the other chapters, get it.
Yeah.
Have the conversation.
It's 12 wonderful chapters. You're going to get something out of it, but I'm going to tell you, you're
with
going to
a
be a
great
different
introduction.
person. Yep.
So again, we cannot stress this enough. This book, we put as much into this book that we possibly could put in each chapter. Of course, there's always more. We have another 12 chapters that's sitting on our
Easily.
computer
Yes.
to finish, but we put as much in this book that we could put in the chapters to help you with a good starting point, right? Let's start
Start.
something different
There
so
you
that
go.
we can have something different, so that we can manifest a joy-filled relationship. That's what it's all about. And Jason and I aren't saying we're perfect.
Nope.
We wrote this book because these are practices that we use. And there are so many. Throughout the years, we was like, oh, that really worked for us. Oh, this really worked. We've taken classes. We went to workshops. We've gotten
Retreats.
coaching. And,
Yeah.
we've gotten certified. And there's so many things that we learned that we were like, that's really good when we did that exercise. We should write that down. So keeping a journal and understanding and writing down things, we didn't know what it was going to come of it. We never intended on being in the space that we're in.
No, not at all.
We've always had a good foundation and we had something to build on when we got to those rocky places that we created, because we created them for ourselves. But then we had to figure out, how do you get out of it, right? We found ourselves, as the saying goes, up a creek without a paddle. We had to learn how to create our paddle. And that was through all of the other training and things that we got. And then this book came about from what we practice. And sometimes when we forget things, we got to go right back in here. And that's what God brought this book forward, not just for us, as we've said on our story lately. Our story is not our story. It's to share with other people, to let you know we're all going through the same thing in relationships. But hey, this is what I did. Try it.
Yep.
See if it works for you.
It's not a regular relationship book.
It's not.
It's a practical guide, right? It's something that you're going to use over and over again.
Sorry.
It's a practical guide. it's something you're going to have to use and work with. You're going to highlight.
And soon we're going to be coming out with the workbook to just go along with this, to just give you more in-depth exercises, more because, like I said, there's only so much you can put in a book. And so it's going to be more coming out, but start somewhere. Start the change. Start the change.
It's going to, this is the first of many tools. There's a lot of companions that go along with this book. We have the meditation. We have the denials and affirmations.
Absolutely.
We have the workbook. So there's many different tools and exercises that's there to support this work here.
That are right at your fingertips, that you can have them right now.
But you'd have to get the book first, and then you'll start to unlock a lot of those other channels. So purchase the book, and it's a lot of hidden gems in this thing. So you'd be surprised at what you have access to once you get the book.
Or what common sense is not so common.
Ooh, common sense isn't common.
All right. So I think that's it for me.
I think that's it for me, too. And I've enjoyed this listening and hearing session we had. It's been a blast. And I know you guys enjoyed this as well.
So don't forget, we are back on Fridays.
Yes.
We took a break, as we explained to you guys. We took a break from the podcast, both the pre-recorded and our Friday Night Lives, which is No Drama Fridays.
Yes.
So when you bring your questions, don't bring the drama.
No drama.
So we are live on Fridays at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel.
And you can get both of us at Legendary Relationship.
At Legendary Relationship. Is there anything else? Oh, this Saturday, if you are listening to this podcast, the week of October
19th.
What is this week? It
started
started
the 14th.
With
the week of the 14th.
The 14th, the week starts on the 13th, right? 13th is Sunday. So the week of the 13th through the 19th, October 19th, we will be at the Irwin Community Center doing an interview, a live session, talking with Shirley Price Lawson about the book and about how to manifest, how to understand universal law, and how to apply it in your life. It's really a topic about just understanding who we are and how we operate in this beautiful, wonderful universe that we have. So it will be Saturday at 10:30 a.m. at the Irwin Community Center at 18120 Highland Avenue. You could have said it.
I was just getting ready to say, it's 18120 Highland Avenue in Homewood, Illinois. Be there at around 10:15 because we're getting started promptly at 10:30.
And
bring a friend.
Or
two.
Or
three. Just bring people.
Bring your mate. Right.
Well, definitely bring your mate. But bring someone. I need you to bring people so that you know that they may need some help, right? That the relationship in their life may not be where they want it to be. And people don't even understand that they need help. But you can look in sometimes and be like, man, I think this message might resonate with this person.
If you have a friend, or if you're that friend that's always complaining about your relationship or your mate or the issues in your relationship,
you need to come.
Then you need to be there.
If you're in the Chicagoland area, you need to be here. That's
Saturday, October the 19th at 10:30 a.m. at
Irwin Community Center, 18120 Highland Avenue in Homewood, Illinois. We're starting at 10:30, but come at around 10:15 or earlier so you can make sure you get a seat.
All right. It's going to be a great conversation, a great eye-opener. So we really do hope you guys can join us.
So do I.
Anything else?
I think that's it. We'll be back next week. Enjoy and have a wonderful week. Is there anything else I want to leave you with?
Next week, we will be talking about more relationship issues.
You can count on that.
All right. So as the events come up, we don't want to give you too much because people get really confused.
Yep.
So as we're posting the next 3 or 4 weeks, people are like, where are you going to be? So we're doing it week by week, even though that doesn't always work. But yeah. So, all right. Tune in, and you can catch all of our podcasts at
legendaryrelationship.com.
Or
Apple Podcasts. You can catch us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Where else are we at? TikTok. You can get us any and every place on social media.
You can also visit our website at
legendaryrelationship.com.
You can purchase our book at
Manifest a Joy-Filled Relationship.com.
And you can find us Saturday, October the 19th at
Irwin Community Center, 18120 Highland Avenue, Homewood, Illinois.
So that wraps up another episode with
Jason and Tina Marie.
That's me. So as always, guys,
we're in it to win it.
Have a great week.
Talk to you next week, guys.
Friday.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Lovin' Beyond the I Do podcast. Head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Legendary Relationship, or visit our website at legendaryrelationship.com. Till next time, remember to make every day count.